As the title suggests, that is, we will be discussing about linguistic death for the cause of global language. Um, will the emergence of a global language hasten the disappearance of minority language and cause widespread language death? This is the question. So we have to discuss some issues regarding uh, the questions. And what is the issues? The process of language domination and laws have been known throughout linguistics history and exist independently of the emergence of global language. So we have already learned for the cause of global language, some minority language will die away. But we have to discuss in details how and in which way. No one knows how many languages have died since humans became able to speak, but it must be thousands. We have learned that from the initial stage of the history, um, there are nearly 7,000 languages all over the world. And out of them, many languages have died. But there is no any statistics that how many languages have died after this. But we can imagine that the number is more than 1,000. That means in our previous classes, we have already got the information that nearly 2,000 languages have been died already. In many of these cases, the death has been caused by an ethnic group coming to assimilate within a more dominant society and adopting its language. The first reason of this linguistics death occurs all over the world, that is assimilation and adaptation. It means that when a people, when a person goes to America, naturally this person wants to assimilate or want to adopt that language and culture in this way. So if the number of minority languages become less and all the people, linguistics people go to the dominant linguistics group, so the people will be taking the language and gradually their next generation will also be learning the adopt language, and when the elder people will die, the language will die. So this is the uh, first reason, and according to David Crastelli, this is the many reasons. This is the reasons for many cases of linguistic death, that for the cause of assimilation to the dominant language, many languages have been dead. Such kind of situation continues today, though the matter is being discussed with increasing urgency because of unprecedented rate at which indigenous languages are being lost, especially in North America, Brazil, Australia, Indonesia, and the parts of Africa. These are the reasons where we see the many linguistics group. Here we see that the linguistic death is occurring still today in the 21st century. 100 years back, 200 years back, there might be the scenario that many languages died at that time, but still in the 21st century, many linguistics groups are dying. At least 50% of the world's 6,000 or so living languages will die out within the next century. And it is also imagined by David Christel that within the next century, that means in this 21st century, 50%, that means 3,000 languages will die. What is the reason? This is indeed an intellectual and social tragedy. Why? When a language dies, so much is lost, especially in a language which have never been written down or which have been written down only recently. Language is the repository of the history of the people. Think about the indigenous people of Bangladesh, Chakma, Marma, Shautal, Garo. They have their language, but they do not have their alphabet. And uh, several initiative was taken to write their alphabet and their language, but it is not written. But they have their own cultural tradition. A language and a linguistic ethnic group is a repository of the culture. So when a language will die, their culture will die. And though the language is not written, it is not be revived once again. When a language will die, the culture, tradition relating to the language will die forever. This is the grave scenario of linguistics death. It is their identity, oral testimony in the forms of sagas, folk tales, songs, rituals, proverbs, and many other practices provides us with a unique view of our world and a unique canon of literature. Okay, so nowadays culture, folklore, songs, rituals, sagas are initiating the cultural studies and the literary studies all over the world. So for the cause of the linguistics group, the culture will die. So the history of the linguistic will die and the literature will also die. It is their legacy to the rest of the humanity. Once lost, it can never be recaptured. The argument is similar to the used in relation to the conservation of species and the environment. And for the cause of linguistics death, this culture will also be washed away. And this is also related to the conservation of environment. So we should take initiative to make life of this linguistics group. The documentation and the where practicable conservation of language is also a priority. And it was good to see that in 1990 decades, a number of international organizations were formed with the declared aim of recording the posterity as many endangered languages as possible. So there we have an hope that in 1990 decades, many international organizations was formed to preserve this linguistic society, to preserve this minority language from this world. These are the International Clearinghouse for Endangered Languages in Tokyo, the Foundation of Endangered Languages in the UK, the Endangered Language Fund in the USA. So such kind of organization has been established all over the world to protect the language. That means losing a language is losing the heritage, cultural heritage, and that will go, that is losing the literature. And for this reason, such kind of international organization have been established all over the world to protect the culture, language, as well as the literature. Nor it is easy to say how the arrival of English as a global language could directly influence the future of these or many other minority languages. An effect is likely only to those areas where English has itself come to the dominant first language, such as North America, Australia, and the Celtic parts of British Isles. So in case of North America, we see some other languages. And Australia also we see the existence of other languages. And in Britain, some parts of the Britain, we see the old language that is called Celtic language. The early history of language contact in these areas was indeed one of the conquest and assimilation, and the effect of indigenous language were disastrous. So the result of this indigenous language is very problematic at present all over the world. But in more recent time, the emergence of English as a truly global language has, if anything, had the reverse effect, stimulating a stronger response in support of a local language than might otherwise have been the case. Time has uh, changed. Actually, um, English has become the global language. Uh, it is argued that English has become the global language, that this is not harmful for the other language. However, emergence of English as a global language has become stimulating for the other minority languages. This is argued. Movements for language rights alongside civil rights in general have played an important part in several countries, such as in relation to Maori in New Zealand. New Zealand, their first language is English. However, there is another Aboriginal language in New Zealand that is called Maori. Nowadays, for the cause of emerging global language as English, idea of Maori came in discussion that they should think about their indigenous languages. The Aboriginal language in Australia, the Indian languages of Canada and the USA. So many immigrants are there in Canada and USA from Indian subcontinent. So how many Indian languages are used in Canada and USA? Such kind of discussion has come forward for the cause of global language. So if English wouldn't be the global language, if English wouldn't be the dominant global language for communication, world communication, then the issue of Maori, the issue of Australian Aboriginal language, the issue of Indian languages in Canada and USA wouldn't be discussed in linguistics arena. So this is another point. Although often too late, in certain instances, the decline of a language has been slowed and occasionally, as in the case of Wales, halted. Okay. So for this reason, when such kind of discussion has come into light, that means for the cause of dominant global language, the Aboriginal language have been discussed. And for this reason, the Welsh, another language of in UK, this language was about to die, but for the such kind of discussion, the Welsh have the death of Welsh language has been halted. That means the for the emergence of global language, some linguistics death has been slowed down. There is a note. The point can be made even more strongly in such parts of the world in Latin America, where English has traditionally had negligible influence. The hundreds of American Indian languages which have disappeared in Central and South America have done so as a result of cultures which spoke Spanish and Portuguese, not English. So this is also the scenario. Chinese, Russian, Arabic, and other major languages have all had an impact on minority language throughout their history and continue to do so. So such kind of blame, that means for the dominant position of English as a global language, this uh, this is the result, this is the cause of the death of minority language. So such kind of blame can not only be given to English language, such kind of blame might go to the other language like Chinese, Russian, Arabic. So they will also creating dominance in their territory, and they are trying to um, uh, wash away the minority language as well. So the responsibility of language preservation and revitalization is a shared one. So everywhere such kind of initiative should be taken to preserve the minority language. The existence of vigorous movement in support of linguistics minorities commonly associated with the nationalism. Actually, this occurs with the idea of nationalism. And when it is occurred, Alexander the Great occupied the most part of the world. And especially British spread it all over the world. And when America got independence in 1776 or 1774, from that time in Europe and in America, there was an idea of nationalism that is came forward. And such kind of idea of nationalism inspires every nation to go to their origin, that is the cultural origin, and as well as the linguistics origin. What is their language? And this is also another notion of post-colonialism, that when a people will get independence, then they will be speaking in their own language. So the idea of nationalism is very much linked to the idea of language. And that idea illustrates an important truth about the nature of language in general. The need for mutual intelligibility, which is a part of the argument in favor of the global language, is one side of the story. So we will not learn global language. Why? One reason is that they will say that if we speak something, if we write something in my mother language, I will know or learn or understand that is better in comparison to learning in global language or English language. It is one side. That means the other side is that is the national identity. Actually, I want to speak and write in my first language, Bengali. It is not for the cause of understanding. It is for the cause of national identity. People tend to underestimate the role of identity when they express anxieties about language injury and death. And so this is the idea of the linguistics death. That means people are interested to use their own language, the first language, in order to exhibit their national identity, because language and culture is very much linked and related to their own national culture and national heritage as well. So language is a major means. Some would say the chief means of showing where we belong and distinguishing one social group from another. And all over the world, we can see evidence of linguistic divergence rather than convergence. Okay, so wherever you are, if we see that a people is speaking Bengali language, you will easily click to the person and say, oh, you are speaking English, where are you from? Are you from Bangladesh or are you from India? So language is the first priority of getting your identity exposed in the world community. Whenever you are, wherever you are, if you get some people that is speaking in your own language, naturally there will be an affinity. There will be a relation among the two persons. That means language is an idea of nationality. Language is a tool of identity, national identity all over the world. For decades, many people in the countries of former Yugoslavia made use of a common language, that is Serbo-Croatia. But since the civil war of the early 1990 decades, the Serbs have referred to their language as Serbian, the Bosnian to their Bosnia, and the Croats to their Croatian, and the East community drawing attention to the linguistic features which are distinctive. So once upon a time, Serbia had been using the Creole language, the mixture language, that is Serbo-Croatian. But nowadays, they are using the specific ethnic language, that means Bosnian, Croatian. These are the languages. So language is very much linked to the identity, national identity, the cultural heritage, and the origin. A similar situation exists in Scandinavia, where Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish are largely mutually intelligible, but are nonetheless considered to be different languages. So such kind of linguistic group we see the other parts of this world. Arguments about the need for national and cultural identity are often seen as being opposed to those who about the need for mutual intelligibility. So the idea is, that means that is, we don't want to use global language for the cause of understanding. This is not the idea. Actually, this is for the national identity. This is misleading. It is perfectly possible to develop a situation in which intelligibility and identity happily coexist. So, so the idea that one intelligibility, that means the understanding position, and another the national identity, the two ideas. We are not in a position to use the global language for the cause of my national identity. But I am speaking that, no. I am not speaking English because I can understand English. I am not speaking French because I can understand French. Actually, this is not the possible. But David Kistel has suggested that the idea of nationality and the idea of understanding might go together, might coexist together. In which way? The situation here is the familiar one of the bilingualism. So the suggestion is that the such kind of linguistic death will be the death of a culture, will be the death of a heritage, will be the death of a literature successively. So such kind of linguistics death can be eradicated with the idea of bilingualism. A bilingualism where one of the languages within a speaker is the global language, provide access to the global world community, and the other is the well-resourced original language, providing access to the local community. So this idea of linguistics death and natural identity might go together. If a person learns his first language, that will make him resourceful for using his first language, and when he will go forward to learn the global language, he can communicate with the world community. So in one hand, he will be getting national identity, and in another hand, you will get the international recognition by learning the global language. So by using the idea of bilingualism, the intelligibility and the national identity, these two ideas might go together. The two functions can be seen as complementary, responding to different needs. And it is because the functions are so different that a world of linguistics diversity can, in principle, continue to exist in the world united by a common language. None of this is to deny the emergence of the global language can influence the structure of the other language, especially by the providing a fresh source of loan words for use of the other languages. Another danger of global language, that is, for the cause of global language, that is, other languages word will come in light. Such influence can be welcomed, in which case people talk about their language being varied and enriched, or opposed, in which case the metaphors are those of injury and death. The vocabulary of a word, of a language, might be enriched using the word from other languages. Uh, this might be viewed in two perspectives. One perspective, that is, in Bengali language, we use many words that are not from Bengali, actually not from Sanskrit or Maghi Prakita. Okay, but we use Persian words, we use English word, we use some other words. So some people will see that the using words of other language in a language will make the language varied and enriched. But other will say that for using words of other language will be the injury to indigenous language, the first language. For example, in recent years, one of the healthiest languages, French, has tried to protect itself by the law against. In France, they have initiated a great rule in this regard. According to this alternative view, they said that whenever a word in French language is common, you are not able to use the other words. Such like in French, you can use the word computer because in French language, there is another word for computer that is ordinator. So in French language, it is established by law that you cannot use language of other words where there is the availability of the same words in their own language. Also, purist commentators from several other countries have also expressed concern at the way in which English vocabulary, especially that from the American English, has come to permeate their high states and TV program. The arguments are carried on the great emotional force, even though only a tiny part of the lexicon is ever affected in this way. That is enough to arouse the wrath of the prophet of doom. They usually forget the fact that English itself over the centuries has borrowed thousands of words from the other language and constructed thousands more from the elements of other language, including computer, incidentally, which derives from Latin, the mother tongue of French. So in previous slide, we have given examples of computer regarding the French language, but the computer is not an English word. It is a Latin word. English language have borrowed over 350 other languages. So the vocabulary of English language, you see at present, they have borrowed words from 350 other languages of this world. So such kind of exclusion of a language will enrich the language. But some people will see that this is the death of the original language. And again, language changed their character as a result of such borrowing, of course. And these two upset purists who seem unable to appreciate the expressive gains which come from having the option of the choosing between lexical alternatives as in such triplets, that is Anglo-Saxon, kingly, French, royal, and Latin, regal. So this is the situation of the vocabulary of English language or any other languages. The relationship between global spread of English and its impact on the other languages attracted increasing debate during the 1990 decades. The fact that it is possible to show a correlation between the rate of English adaptation and the demise of minority language has led some observer to reassert the conclusion that there is a simple causal link between the two phenomena, ignoring the fact that there has been a similar loss of linguistics diversity in parts of the world where English has not had a history of significant presence, such as Latin America, Russia, and China. So this scenario will also uh, uh, noticed in this area. A more deep-rooted process of globalization seems to be at work today, transcending individual language situation. Anachronistic views of linguistics imperialism, which see as important only the power asymmetry between the former colonial nations and the nations of the third world, are hopelessly inadequate in an explanation of the linguistics reality. They especially ignore the fact that first world countries with strong languages seem to be under just as much pressure to adopt English, and that some of the mm, harsh, harshest attack on English have come from the countries which have no such colonial legacy. When dominant languages feel they are being dominated, something much bigger than a simplistic conception of power relation must be involved. So in case of linguistics dominance, we have already discussed that some power will be invested for the language dominance, and language will get dominance for the cause of the power of the country where this language is used as the first language. So English has become the first language or the global language for the power of English speaking countries. And local languages continue to perform an important set of functions, chiefly the expression of the local identity, and the English is seen as a primary means of achieving the global presence. So in this regard, local language, that means the native language, will get prominence of expressing the identity. However, English language will show that uh, this skill in English language will make someone able to make or achieve the global communication. Uh, It is a model which sees English playing the central role in empowering the subjugated and marginalized, and eroding the division between the haves and the haves not. And those who argue in this position have been dismissed as displaying naive liberal idealism and adopting a liberal laziness fear attitude. Rather, it is linguistics imperialism position which is naive, disregarding the complex realities of the world, in which a historical conception of power relations has to be seen alongside at the emergence set of empowering the relationship in which English has a new functional role no longer associated with the political authority or it once held. Uh, if working towards the above goal is idealism, I am happy to be an idealist. However, it is by no means, given the amount of time, energy, and money which have been devoted in recent years to language revitalizing and related matters. So there is an issue that uh, the approach recognizes the legacy of colonialism as a matter of historical fact, but its emphasis is now on discontinuous and away from the power and towards the functional specialization. So there is a model over here, according to David Gestel. He said that once upon a time, the country where many countries were the colony of English-speaking country like Britain. But when the colonial period was over, that country got revitalized. That country got the idea of expressing their national and linguistic identity. This is a view expressed by David Crushall, and he also support that this is good, that for the cause of the colonial power, we have got the idea of um, um, expressing our identity towards the world community. And this is the liberal attitude of colonialism. And David Kister also support that. And admittedly, the progress which has been made in a tiny compared with the disastrous effect of globalization on global diversity. But to place all the blame to English and to ignore the more fundamental economic issues that are involved is, as to recent commentators have put it, to attack the wrong target. Actually, we are uh, targeting, we are blaming English language because once upon a time, English speaking people spread colony all over the world. But David Kiss also put that such kind of economic issues relating to the that can be called the neo-colonialism, in order to suppress politically and in order to suppress economically. So, for the existence of global language, for the more dominant position of English as a global language, we naturally blame for the idea of colonialism. But David Kishar said it is a wrong target. Actually, for the cause of the colonialism, we have got the idea of asserting ourselves in a world community. And in this situation, uh, a concluding remark has been done. And what is that? If English can facilitate the process of universal disposition and loss, so it can be turned around and made to facilitate the contrary process of universal empowerment and gain. So English once upon a time was trying to dominate the countries, but is such kind of colonialism is also a process of universal empowerment and gain. So we have once upon a time dominated by English, but next time after getting independence, we are empowered to express our identity to the world community. So thank you all. That is the issue relating to the global language. So so you will have